people join. Bear with me. I know we have some hockey. I think there's some basketball on tonight. Obviously, some college football. Someone let me know how the Stars Lightning game turns out if you're in the chat. I know they're in overtime. I was going to try to finish that, but I thought I'd jump on. Let's see, copy that. I think that's how I do it. Let some more people join. Looks like we got 5 people in here. Just sending this out a few places. Maybe we can get to 10 people. Oh, that'd be exciting. Let's see, where else to send it? Let's go here. Get a couple more. Is that Stars game still going on? I assume it is. I'll check that before we start. And I know there's basketball. So we send it there. Let's go. Gotta do this all myself. No one to help me. Alright, let's see what we got going on here. We got 10 people in here. Looks like the Stars Lightning still in overtime. Lakers up 10 with 6 left. NCAA football, LSU lost. Oklahoma lost. Any other upsets? Well, let's go ahead and get into tomorrow's slate for NFL Week 3. Once again, my name is Clay Hodges. You can find me on Twitter at NotDuckHodges. This is Going for Two War Room After Dark, Episode 3. And usually for those who are just now joining us or, kind of join us in the middle, usually try to keep this around 30 to 45 minutes. It's Saturday night. People got shit to do. So we just kind of try to rock and roll from there. Hopefully everyone can hear me. Feel free to send anything via the chat. Happy to answer questions, betting, fantasy, DFS related. We will go through some game scripts here real quick, rock and roll, and then get out of here. I think the first thing that is a signed Mike Tyson picture. It's probably worth about $50. It's very fancy. Actually, it's probably worth $100 because I hear he's coming back to fight soon. So maybe they'll make a comeback and reboot that since they kind of canceled it in the 90s because of his felonies and they didn't really want to support him. Yep. So let's see. I think on this slate for DFS purposes, we got a lot of injuries. I don't even think I can name half of them off the top of my head, but obviously I have McCaffrey, Saquon. We have injuries on the defensive side like Nick Bosa, Jimmy Garoppolo, basically the whole 49ers offense and defense. So lots of injuries to consider here, but I think that, obviously it opens up some plays that people are going to be pretty excited to just kind of get in there because you have a $10,000 Christian McCaffrey and all of a sudden you have a $5,000 Mike Davis. People are just going to say, even if you get 75% of the work or 75% of the talent, it pays off. And we'll get there. But that's something to consider is it's just kind of like the FOMO, have to play it scenario. It's the first week, and people just want to get in there and play some of these guys. I think for fantasy, maybe Mike Davis is okay. DFS, maybe not so much. I guess all depends on your league. I wouldn't get too creative and bench someone you drafted highly and think that maybe Mike Davis can do it, but we'll get there. Well, let's go through some of the games here, and I see people are asking some questions here in the chat. So the first week I got too distracted by you guys, so I try not to look at it until I'm taking a break or towards the end. So I apologize. I'm not ignoring anybody. Keep the questions coming, and then we'll address them. But I think the first game that's on everyone's mind is obviously. I thought I had it right up here, but it's. I'm just trying to see who's at home. I think they're at Seattle. It's Dallas versus Seattle. Yep, they're in Seattle. Not that it, I guess, really matters because there's no home field advantage unless it's a full capacity crowd. But that team total went, and once again, like last week, I pulled these early in the week, so the lines might change. So don't send me messages or say, "Hey, no, actually the total's like 58, and you're saying it's 56." I don't know. I'm just pulling this. I'm just got the data. So I have this Dallas at Seattle. Seattle favored by 5. The game totals at 56, which is pretty aggressive. The highest we've seen this year. Probably the highest we've seen outside like a Kansas City game in a couple of years. But we'll make this one pretty easy because I think a lot of people try to get creative and think, okay, if I avoid this game because everyone's going to play it, doesn't hit, I'm in the driver's seat. Well, first you still have to hit your other picks, and second, in these spots, I just try not to get too. I don't try to get galaxy brain and overthink it. To me, this is shootout all the way. Both teams are very likely to score 4 touchdowns and get around 30 points. So yeah, with the over/under total implied, yeah, I guess they're implying Seattle's going to score more than 4 touchdowns and Dallas just a hair under. But you can really play this out any way you want. I usually prefer where we can kind of, well, I guess we can. Yeah, we can cut out, in my opinion. What I would do, you can cut out the Seattle tight ends, which I don't think is a hot take because they have Disley, Olsen, and I think they have another one. I forget his name, but they kind of all feed into each other, and they're not emphasized in that offense anyway. So um, you don't have to get too creative there and think you have to play one of them. Sure, one might catch a touchdown, but one catch for 7 yards and a touchdown really doesn't do it for you anyway. So I don't worry too much about that. On the other end, I do think a lot of people will be kind of excited, not too excited, but some people will play Dalton Schultz for the Cowboys after he got a large target percentage last week. And what I would emphasize here is Jamal Adams, like, while he's used all over the field, every stop along his way, which has only been the Jets, and here, last year the Jets were top notch against tight ends, and now they're horrible. And so far this year, the data is showing that Seattle's top notch against tight ends. So Jamal Adams has an effect there. Dalton Schultz, to me, is not an elite talent where he can beat that. So I'm just going to cross off both tight ends. But other than that, you have the 2 quarterbacks, the 2 running backs. Dallas, you have 3 wide receivers. Seattle, you have 2 wide receivers. So mix and matching where you can. Cash and GPPs, to me, I will be at least 2, probably 3 plus in a lot of these spots. Just makes a lot of sense. And like I've said on the last couple of these, is I think you get 9 spots. Let's say you get QB, 2 running backs, 3 wide receivers, flex, tight end, defense. Yep, you get 9 spots. If you're trying to go through each game and then pick who has the best, I mean, trying to get a 9 out of 9 to win a GPP, it's pretty hard. But if you're picking a game and saying, I'm pretty certain that this game's going to shoot out, and you're saying, I think 3 of these guys are going to do it, you hit on that kind of scenario there. You got those 3, and then there's only 6 other ones to worry about, which is still hard to do. But I always kind of think of it that way, is that in this game, there's going to be a lot of fantasy points scored, and I'm going to mix and match every single way. So to me, I'm playing Dak, Zeke, Amari, Gallup, Lamb, and then other side, Russ, Carson, Lockett, and Metcalf. Not going to overthink it. Let's move on, because you're not tuning in to hear play the highest scoring game. That's obvious. Let's just kind of go through some of these. We'll skip over some that I don't think really be too interesting. Let's start with the Bears at the Falcons. It's going to be interesting because Julio might be out. I'm hearing and I haven't checked Twitter or Adam Schefter recently, so I apologize if he's already dropped the bomb. But I'm thinking Julio's going to be out for this game. If that's the case, I still kind of like the spot for Hayden Hurst the most. But if Julio's out, Russell Gage to me, obviously Calvin Ridley, those would be some good plays. But I think what's interesting on the other side, David Montgomery and Allen Robinson. I've heard some chatter about Mitch Trubisky. I played him the first week, so I'm not going to laugh at anyone that plays him. But to me, I think it's kind of risky here. I'd probably just isolate with either playing David Montgomery, thinking the Chicago Bears get up, and then the Falcons are chasing, and so then you can do it with Gage, Ridley, Hurst, or a mixture of them. Probably wouldn't even play Julio if he's active because he might be a decoy. But or I do Allen Robinson thinking it's some sort of shootout. I'm not really interested in Gurley there. So it's kind of a thought. Let's see. So some of the other games, Bengals at Philly. I think this is another interesting spot. Probably my favorite kind of stack for me would be Miles Sanders and the Eagles defense. I'm a little nervous about that just because the Eagles defense isn't as good as probably most people think. But I think they're 2,800 on DraftKings, and they're probably that's probably the bottom for me right there. I'm not going to dip lower and get creative. I usually like to try to find it as low as possible, but I just don't see anyone in a really good spot. So for me, Philly might be it. They don't have a great defense, but like if you've struggled through these Thursday night games, you saw last week Joe Burrow threw, I think, 41 times, 51 times, a million times last week. I don't remember what it was, but he for a rookie, he threw an obscene amount of passes, and that's all I want. If I'm picking a defense, I want the opposing team just dropping back because that gives me 50 chances to sack him, intercept him, force fumble him. Much better than them just handing it off. But condensed target share for Philadelphia, so Ertz and Goddard are in play too, and I'll probably have some Jackson. Not sure if I'll get to Wentz. Maybe I will, like in just the early slate. On the Cincy side, bringing it back, I've heard a lot of AJ Green, and obviously he's a pretty good talent. He's coming off a couple injuries. And I think he's leading the league in like air yards. I've seen some data where everyone's kind of pumping him up, saying his big day's coming. To me, I'm still high on Darius Slay as a defender, and I assume he would be covering him. So I think it kind of slows him down a bit, and he's still been slow out of the gates, even though he's getting the targets. So I'd probably go to like a Tyler Boyd. I know people might be trying to play Sample as a cheap tight end. Not opposed to that, but if you're thinking of maybe a under the radar type game here, maybe Philly and Cincinnati could do it because I think there are pieces on each side. Like I said, I'm not going through all these games, so if I'm looking, I'm just considering whether to yap about it. Just don't think there. I will say for Rams at Bills, another injury. Zach Moss is out, so Singletary I think is a lock for cash games. I think he's in a pretty good spot salary. He's in a pretty good spot salary wise on DraftKings. He's right there with Jerick McKinnon, Mike Davis. I'm sure I'm missing another one that's kind of jumping into a replacement role. Singletary's probably my favorite. He showed the chops last year, and now he's presumably getting more carries. Maybe he'll get some inside the red zone. So Singletary's one of my favorite obvious cash plays there, but I'm not going to try to overthink it. But the thing I wanted to comment here is with Tyler Higbee. He went off for 3 touchdowns last week. He's priced up. I think on the main slate, he's like the most expensive one because all the great tight ends are playing prime time and Kittle's out, most likely, I believe. I would probably go back there pending. I think their 2 linebackers are questionable for Buffalo, Edmonds and Milano. Last week, I forget who the Bills played, but I think they gave up some they gave up plenty of yards and maybe even a touchdown to the tight end, and it was because Milano and Edmonds were out, and they're usually notorious for shutting down tight ends. So it's all going to hinge on that. I think he's going to be a little bit low owned just because of price and what he did last week. No one wants to chase a 3 touchdown week. That's always kind of a donkey move. So to me, that's a game. That's a unless something drops tonight, that's like a 10:30 Central Time. Injury report where I'm going to see what the heck's going on, and might be playing him. I think he could be a good GPP winner there. Oh yeah, one of the other, I talked about Jerick McKinnon, but on the other side, Giants, obviously Saquon's out, so who's playing for them? Probably, you'll hear people say, I agree with that. You always want to be a week early. To me, I just don't know where to plunge here, so I would have to be a week behind. Dion Lewis is kind of the obvious one, but he hasn't ever, in my opinion, really carried the load. He was a great ancillary piece for the Patriots, but he was never like the bell cow. And so for people to just assume he's going to get all of Saquon's work, now he might catch the passes, which raises his floor, but Wayne Gallman might be in there. And then I know, obviously, they signed Freeman, who will be eaten into it in the future. Maybe it starts this week. Maybe, he's a running back. He still has to learn the offense, but I think you can acclimate a running back to a system a little bit quicker than some of the other positions. You're just saying this is the type of plays you're going to run to the left, to the right, whether it's a power move, zone read, whatever the case may be. They probably wouldn't have him on passing plays where he's trying to pick up coverage or anything like that. But that's something to consider there. Let's see. The Washington Footballs at the Browns. Browns favored by 7, which is weird. I think here the cornerbacks for the Footballs, the cornerbacks for the Browns are all out. I think Ward's questionable, but Greedy Williams is out, and I think their corners out their slot corners out as well. So to me, Terry McLaurin. Cleveland's always notoriously bad against tight ends, so Logan Thomas, even though it makes me nervous playing Logan Thomas, that's something I really want to consider. And then coming back, it's got to be over a team total of 44. It's just tough for me to really identify how they're going to do it. They have 4 or 5, pretty talented playmakers, and I think it matches up best for Hooper, but the first 2 games, I think he's caught 2 or 3 passes, so that makes me a little nervous. OBJ came out this week in an interview and said he's accepting his role, that this is a run-first offense. Chubb and Hunt are kind of sharing the load, so not sure how you're going to attack that there. So it might just be a one-off taking McLaurin. He might be one of my favorite plays, but I don't think you can bring it back from a stacking perspective. One that's interesting to me now, we're kind of getting to the afternoon, Panthers at Chargers. A lot of people are talking about playing Joshua Kelly. I know he has the same amount of carries as Eckler. I'll probably be late on him if he arrives this week. A lot of people will be celebrating, but I do love Eckler, and I do love the Chargers defense stack. I know they lost Ingram today, which hurts a little bit, but I just, the Carolina team, they're square in the hunt for that number 1 pick, and they should probably be prioritizing that. The Jets are going to try to beat them at that game and get Trevor Lawrence, but Carolina should really be trying there, and their defense doesn't really have to try because they're starting like 7 rookies. They've lost their defensive tackle Short, who's the only one up the middle. So starting Herbert to Eckler, Adding the Chargers defense, I'll probably even be playing Keenan Allen. Hunter Henry's in a great spot because obviously Luke Kuechly isn't there in the middle, who's a great coverage linebacker as well. People just think of him as a great tackler, but I mean, he was one of the best coverage linebackers there were. So to me, this is just kind of like a interruption spot for the Chargers. It's just a worry whether the Panthers would be able to keep up and keep the foot on the gas, because I do think Anthony Lynn, with a rookie quarterback, would be happy if they got up to like a 21-0 lead in the first half. So just kind of then grind the ball, run up the middle. That's when Joshua Kelly, I think, would really produce more. So there is that scenario. But to me, I don't know who I'd play from the Panthers, but I'm cautiously optimistic they can at least keep it competitive into the third and fourth, where maybe Herbert's able to get them 3 to 4 touchdowns, and then it's over. But like I said, I like the Chargers D, so they might be the first. They might have a pick six or a strip sack and return it, and then it just kind of puts everything, just flips everything. So you got to be careful there. I think Curtis Samuel might be my favorite from the Panthers. I know a lot of people go DJ Moore, just assuming that he will get a lot more targets with CMC out, which is probably true, but that's like one of the best secondaries in the league. So to me, that's kind of a buyer beware. And I think I touched upon a little bit Mike Davis. I know he had 8 catches like in the last 2 minutes last week, but I don't know. I mean, he's not going to be the bell cow. He's not going to get like 95% of the snaps. He might get 75, but to me, this is an elite defense against a not elite running back. So his floor might be there if you think he's going to get the dump offs, but I just don't think this Panthers team's going to score too much. So Mike Davis, I think I have a friendly bet with someone on Twitter, a McGriddle, whether it'll be Mike Davis or Devin Singletary scoring more. I got Singletary in that. I feel pretty confident about that. So we'll see. Well, let's see some of the other ones. We've talked about Cowboys, Seahawks. The other big game from the afternoon slate, Detroit Lions at Cardinals. But I have Cardinals favored by 6, over under at 54.5. So right there with the Cowboys, Seahawks. Obviously, what I would recommend if you're trying to get off these games because you think they're just going to be too popular, play the early only slate. There's, I think, 8 games, 7, and neither of the chalky games are going to be on that slate. So if you're worried, like everyone's just going to have the same lineup with like a Kyler, 2 Hopkins, and have Zeke and DK Metcalf in there or something like that. You play the early only, you don't have to worry about that if you think you have an edge, because right now when looking at the quarterbacks there, I'm struggling which one I want. Maybe Cam, but it's really difficult to really ascertain what you want there, because once you get to the full slate, afternoon slate or Thursday night to Monday night, you're going to have to deal with these. And I'm not as confident in this one shooting out as I would be Dallas and at Seattle. So I don't blame you if you kind of avoid it a little bit, but I'm still going to have plenty of exposure to it with Kyler. It's pretty easy to have exposure. Like when I was talking about Dallas and Seattle, we had like 8 pieces. With Detroit and Arizona, maybe it's 4 or 5. With Arizona, it's Kyler, Drake, and Hopkins. I think a millionaire maker, you might try throwing in Isabella or something crazy if you want, or their tight end, Arnold. But like you're playing 20 max like I like to do, I'm not touching it. And then on the Detroit Lions side, I like Swift a little bit as a pivot, but that's kind of like a crazy. That's the millionaire maker pivot, because I think he's priced right there with Singletary and Mike Davis. So I'm not really enthused to go there. But Hawkinson, the Cardinals last year were the worst against tight ends. This year they're pretty respectable. I don't think I buy the data so far this year. So Hawkinson would be in a good spot. It depends to see what Galladay does. I think he is playing. But he might just be used as a decoy. But Hawkinson to me is someone you could play, and then obviously Stafford if you're just going to project this to be a shootout. But to me, if I and I might bet this game, but I do think Cardinals win. But the over under team totals here have it where it's a back and forth affair. So maybe the Lions come out flat. They're a horrible defense, and I think they're 0 yeah, they are 0-2 after losing that heartbreaker to Chicago in the first week, and I think they got pummeled by Green Bay last week. So they're a team to me in the crossroads. Got to really consider what they're doing in the future. They probably will have a new coach soon, maybe even a new quarterback. So something to think about there. I think if I was going to bet on one of these games being a disappointment, it might be that one. Not from both sides. I don't think the defenses rise up, but something there. Let's see here. Only got a couple games left, and we've been going for about 30 minutes, so this is right on track. Playing Tampa Bay at Denver. I actually really do like Driscoll. I don't know. People have been talking smack about him, but I don't think this is the best spot. I do think the Tampa Bay Bucks have a great defense, so I'm not going to play around there. I think obviously the biggest play or question from a DFS perspective is KJ Hamler, who's the minimum on DraftKings at 3,000. I think he's viable in cash and GPPs. You just play him, regardless if Judy's out. I think he's questionable, but if Judy is ruled out, it's a no-brainer to me. But just with the data I have right now, even if he's questionable, Hamler's getting in there. Even if he catches 3 for 40 yards, he doesn't pay off, but he's not killing your lineup. And then for those playing the Thursday night through Monday night football slates, we do have some really good games from an NFL fantasy betting perspective. We got the Packers at the Saints, and we have the Chiefs at the Ravens, which is the game of the year. I didn't check the news today, but I'm pretty sure Adams and Thomas both are basically out or doubtful. And to me, that just opens up so many things, and you can go a lot of different ways. To me personally, what I would do, and you saw this play out last week with the Saints, is I think both of these teams have 2 elite skill set players. You lose one, they're going to rely on the other one. So Thomas was out last week. A lot of people went to Sanders. Myself, I felt like an idiot for that. Went to Traquan, who didn't smash or anything like that, but looked better than Sanders. And then Jared Cook, who at least fell in the end zone to kind of save his game. But the star of the Monday night game for the Saints was Alvin Kamara. That will probably ring true again this week. They're just going to rely on him with Michael Thomas out. And if Adams is out, and the data from last year reflects this, Aaron Jones should just feast. So both of the running backs to me are in play. And then obviously a lot of people, if you just think we got an alpha receiver out that's cost 8,000 on DraftKings usually, and now the new number one's 4,000 or 5,000, just play him. You know, we got MVS, Alan Lazard, or Traquan Smith. I probably won't go back to Sanders because he just burned me so bad last week, but so he'll probably play well, to be honest. But I do like Cook. But I think there's a lot of pieces here. But if you're just going to choose one, it would be just choose either of the running backs, whichever one fits in, because I think both of them are going to have big games. I wouldn't play them both just because that usually doesn't correlate. But you never know. This is kind of an unusual circumstance with two of the top 3, in my opinion, wide receivers out. And then Chiefs at Ravens. I mean, both have really good defenses, in my opinion, but obviously elite offenses, so you can't really game script or match up too much because Tyreek Hill just takes one play for him to do it. Same with Hollywood on the other side. He could just do it, and then, we got Andrews and Kelsey just over the middle. They're elite. So to me, I'm going to be obviously interested in the 2 best quarterbacks. They're the price the most, so they'll just probably come down to a price comparison, what I can fit in and what I want to do. Probably lean a little bit more Lamar, because for them to win. I think it'd probably dictate what they want to do is just run the ball, which plays into what Lamar does, obviously. And then I think the two tight ends are probably the safest plays. To me, I think both of these teams could be attacked over the middle. And I know Sammy Watkins is questionable. It sounds like he might play. If not, I don't know who jumps into that number 2, whether it's Hardman or Robinson, but could have some interest there. But I do think this game shoots out. It's just the issue, especially with the Chiefs, they could just spread this out so much with all their players. So it's hard to really pinpoint. So if you want to grab it with Mahomes, that's fine. But that's kind of the thoughts there. So kind of just ran through like 5 or 6 of my favorite games there, and just kind of what my thoughts were. So let me look at the chat here, get those questions in before we head out here. How high would you rank MVS with Adams' injury? Very good question. We just kind of covered this. It's always tough from a fantasy perspective just because I don't know your team or your league. I would assume I'll just say this, the deeper the league, the more viable MVS would be. To me, if like you're in a 10 to 12 team league, and like I said, it depends who you have. If there's other injuries, maybe you have to do this. But later in the seasons when it's kind of more creative, you can do matchup based. But right now, early on, I'm playing the guys I drafted. So I would be playing people like a Will Fuller, whoever you would maybe have ahead of him. I'm not going to try to think too galaxy brain it with like the matchups and say, oh, I think MVS is in a great spot. I'm going to play the guys I drafted who I think are the superior talent. Now, if your team's a little bit more decimated or it's a deeper league and it's a legitimate question about should I play MVS, then yeah. He or Lazard will probably produce. It's just I don't know which one. So take your shot. Yeah, I would do that. Mooney at 3K. Whew. That's interesting. That is a Millie Maker type play for sure. If we're talking DFS, don't do it for fantasy. I kind of like it but like I said, that's like the deepest GPPs. If you're trying to do the Millie Maker, that's something. Like Tariq Cohen 2 or 3 years ago was on the week 1 Millie Maker, and no one knew who he was, and he just went off as the backup to whoever it was at that point that was running the football for the Bears. So to me, Mooney, I don't know much about him, to be honest, but I do know he's kind of playing in the 2 wide receiver sets over Anthony Miller. So Anthony is only coming on in 3 wide receiver sets, which they're not using too much, which is weird. They're using those 2 tight end sets with the corpse of Jimmy Graham and whoever their second. Oh yeah, Kmet is their second tight end. So Mooney's. I think that's interesting. I'm glad you brought that up. You're thinking well there, Garson, because the Falcons suck, and I think. Oh, and I read their rookie corner, which maybe is good or bad. I don't know. But the rookie corner's out. So they were going to start him. So if they obviously thought that he was startable, someone worse is coming in. So I do think Allen Robinson's going to feast. But Mooney, I don't know if he's a burner or more of a possession guy, but for 3K, it would be an interesting pivot over Hamler at the same price for a Millie Maker only. If you're doing like I said, the 20 max that has like 20,000 entrants, kind of like what I like to do, I think it's a little thin. I'm not going to go there, but that's just my opinion. But those are the types of thoughts you want to do if you're trying to make the big bucks, because all those are top heavy and either you're first or you're last. So YOLO type thing. So I think that's it for this week. Let me see if there are any other questions here. I know people like the Griffey jersey. Mike Tyson, yep, that's autographed up there. I think we've kept this under between 30 and 45 minutes, which is always the goal. So if there are no other questions, we'll just wrap this up. But good luck to you all week 3. Once again, feel free to check me out on goingfor2.com or on Twitter at notduckhodges.com. And yeah, look at Schefter for the latest news. I'm sure I know at midnight, I think it's Eastern, maybe it's midnight Central, but he just starts dropping what he's hearing because these coaches are making their final decisions. So if you want to get ahead of it, if you're trying to make your lineups, you can kind of jump in. You should be releasing those news soon. Otherwise, y'all, good luck this week, and I will see you next week.